Thank you for taking the time. We're here to chat about JAKOB'S Wife.
Yeah.
This is a project that's sort of very close to your heart. You've been working on bringing this script
Mhm.
to being for years. What was it about the story that really resonated with you and made you so determined to see it through?
Well, I've always wanted to play a classic character, and playing a vampire was just, something that I thought would be extremely interesting and fulfilling. I grew up watching Dark Shadows when I was younger, and I think maybe that was foretelling of the future. I don't know, but to play some sort of iconic character in the horror genre is, since I've been working in it for so long, it was something that was elusive to me. So that was first and foremost what attracted me to the script. But also, I just read the script and loved it because it was a story about a woman's empowerment and an awakening to herself. But it was also the story of a long term marriage and what that means. And that I'm in a long term marriage. And Larry Fessenden, who plays Jacob, is in a long term marriage. And he was somebody that I spoke to early on in the process. He was the first person I thought of to play Jacob. And I I just really like the aspect that the story was also kind of close to me and what was happening in my career at the time, because I had sort of stepped away from acting in the horror genre for a few years. I wasn't getting a lot of roles in my middle and late 30s. Things weren't happening. And so I sort of just went, all right, well, I guess I won't do it anymore. And then I got the call a number of years ago to be in Adam Wingard's You're Next. And then something happened. It's just people realized I was around and I started getting calls. And I thought, oh, that was kind of my bite in the neck, was doing that film. And the world kind of opened up for me. And I feel like Anne's world opened up after she became bitten by the vampire. So I could see the similarities in what's going on in my life and the story of Anne. So immediately when I read it, it felt so close to me and it felt like something I just had to do. And at the time, even though it took me 4 years to develop this and find a distributor and get the money and get a director on board, it felt like the movie that I had to do, that if I didn't do any other movie ever again in my life, I wanted to do this one. And it was a long road and it was difficult and we had a lot of ups and downs and things almost didn't happen and I almost gave up a few times, but I just kept in there. And one of my main producers is Bob Portal from Amp Films, and he stuck with me the whole time. And we finally got to make it. So I feel like I made a personal story. I feel like it's a personal story to me, and is just a metaphor for my own life. And you know, uh, and again, getting the chance to play an iconic kind of character was important to me at some point in my career. I wanted to do that.
I mean, you've worked with Travis before when he was in a producing capacity. At what stage did you know that he was going to be like the right person to get this film through?
Right, really towards the end, because we had one director attached for a short amount of time, and that didn't work out. And then we talked to a few other people, and we hadn't really found anybody who wanted to do it. To be honest with you, I think um, maybe it was the fact that it was an older person's story. I don't know. But I took it to a bunch of people through different iterations of the script and where we were, and wasn't finding anybody that was really resonating with the material as much. And then we hadn't even thought of Travis really, even though he was a close collaborator to myself and Bob Portal. But then his movie came out, Girl on the Third Floor. I think it came out maybe it was about a week before the movie came out. And we said, well, what about Travis? He's been working in the business for so long. His movie's coming out. Let's ask him if we can watch it. So we all watched it and we really liked it. And we said, well, maybe we should talk to Travis. I mean, we all work so well together. We know him. He's such a smart producer, and now he wants to direct. So let's just send it to him. So we sent it to him. And then he called me right afterwards and he said, Barbara, I get this story. I love the script. I love you. I want this to be in my next movie. I don't want you to talk to any other directors. I want to make this movie with you guys, and let's have a meeting as soon as possible. And so it happened maybe 6 months before we started filming. And once Travis came on the project, we were able to raise the money very quickly because on the heels of his movie doing so well, and just his name, and my attachment to the project for so long, and the project itself, everybody really liked the story, but we just had to put kind of more of a package together. And when we had Travis, just everything really did come together really nicely for us to start filming about 6 months later.
I mean, it's not often, as you said, it's not often that you see an older person, let alone a woman, in genre films as the protagonist. You're kind of hoping that there now might be a shift in perspective with JAKOB'S Wife performing so well, maybe opening the door for more films to explore these types of characters. Because I mean, there's obviously plenty of actors out there that would be willing to take on these roles.
Well, and initially the movie was told through the eyes of Jacob and how he would feel if he were dealing with somebody who had a terminal illness. That was the metaphor for the movie. So when I read it and got it from Mark Steensland and Bob Portal read it, we said, well, we'd like to change that aspect and make it more from the eyes of the older woman. And he was like, fine, that sounds great to me. Let's do that. And it seemed to me, even a number of years ago, to be in the cultural zeitgeist that we wanted to see more things from women, and wanted to have more stories from women, not necessarily an older woman, but there was already a movement going towards more inclusivity of women's stories and women's voices. And so, we were sort of riding that movement in that moment. And I was really happy to see, I think, towards the end of our editing process, Relic came out. And what was that other movie? Anything for Jackson came out, and those were about older people. And I went, oh, we're going to hit this right at the right moment, because these two other independent movies have just come out with a focus on older people, and they're getting traction, and younger people are watching these stories. It wasn't just older people, it was younger horror fans watching them too. So I was like, okay, we're hitting something at the right moment here.
I mean, one of the things that I really like is how in the film, you've got Bonnie as the original sort of master type vampire, who is very much Nosferatu in appearance. But then Anne, I guess, is more of what we've become accustomed to over recent years. The more sort of human looking vampire, which I guess in a way sort of represents the older version of what it meant to be a woman with the newer version of what it meant to be a woman. Did you how much time and effort went into deciding on these looks for these creatures?
Mm-hmm. Well, Travis and I and Bob all discussed our favorite aspects of our favorite horror movies that had to deal with vampires, and one of them was Salem's Lot, and we thought the Nosferatu type vampire is not used as often. So really, we wanted to highlight that aspect because that was one of our favorites from Nosferatu, growing up early on, and we wanted kind of that look for the vampire. And also it was Travis's idea to use the rat aspect, and we felt like a Nosferatu was more like a rat-like, so we wanted to use that element, because we felt like maybe the bats were used more often and rats weren't used as often. So we wanted to infuse the movie with some of our favorite vampire elements, but also try to bring some fresh and new stuff to the forefront. And also originally, the Master Vampire was written as a man. And that was something else that Travis brought to the story, because he read it and he did his own pass on the material, after we got it to a place that we felt good about it. And he did a rewrite of the script, and we started reading it and realized he had changed the gender of the Master Vampire. And I just thought to myself, that's brilliant. Of course it should be a woman. Of course it should be another woman who's telling Anne, you have a choice and you have a voice and you can be the person you want to be. it's usually your confidant, your best female friend who's going to urge you on in those aspects of yourself, not maybe necessarily a male counterpart. So we thought that that was a brilliant change on his part and decided to go with that. And then really, we all wanted Bonnie from the very beginning. You know, we just saw her as this iconic character because she just played an iconic character, but hadn't been given as big a platform as we wanted to give her for this movie.
I mean, it's not the first time that you've been married to Larry Fessenden on screen. You know,
Yeah. Well,
what's
no, no, and we were still here. We were just friends.
Well, okay.
Yes, we weren't married, but we were friends. Yes.
You were friendly. You know, what is he like as a scene partner?
Amazing. I mean, there's just, you know, I have so much trust in Larry, and I think he does for me as well. He's an incredibly giving performer. He's also a producer and a director and a writer. And like me, I feel like in my new career as a producer, he just wants to give to the whole process, and he sees it from so many different points of view, that he's so giving, and he's such a great collaborator that that working with him was really exciting because he brought a lot to the table aside from just being an actor. You know, he was really a full collaborator and had ideas about the project from the very beginning and on set. And I couldn't ask for, you know, just a more interesting, dynamic friend to work with as well. Because I know him, I think it was also really easy to work with him. He's been a friend of mine for 10 years. And it was important for me to work with somebody that I really knew well, and we already had a rapport, because these characters had to feel really lived in. And I think they did because of my relationship with Larry. We also spent some time before we started filming with Travis talking about the dynamics of our relationship. And Travis actually sent Larry and I a questionnaire on our relationships with our own spouses and what we thought about marriage, and then we read each other's, and then we talked about it a little bit more. And Larry's also a longtime married person, as I am. And I think it was important for us to work together too, and work with somebody who had been long married to understand what the dynamics of you know, those things are like in a relationship. And as much as this movie is a feminist movie and a woman's awakening to herself, it's really about a marriage as well. And how do you keep things going after so long? And after a tragedy strikes, how do you not give up on your partner? And that was something I trusted Larry to be able to bring to the forefront of the story, as much as I felt like I could do that as well.
I mean, as a fellow blonde, I was so worried about your lovely hair until Travis posted on social media that it was a wig. But you know, there's a lot of blood in this film. You know, how as an actor do you deal with that?
Shy away from any of that stuff. I'm so used to it from working with Stuart Gordon for so long. Um, I just don't want the special effects to get in the way of the acting, and I never thought they did in this film, really. They were big, you know, we really went for some big swings. Travis wanted to use some of my past films and my history and bring that to the forefront of today's world so that he would kind of honor that part of my history. But also in the film, you know, it starts out very quiet, and like like Anne is, like her character is very quiet and more like a church mouse, and it's more of a slow burn in the beginning, and then once she's bitten, the whole world opens up and it becomes messy and funny and a little bit over the top, because that's how life is when it's lived to its fullest extent. So I think in that aspect, the special effects helped us achieve, you know, the tonal quality, the tonal difference that we wanted to portray on screen. That, you know, at first the movie is more of a drama, and then it veers into, you know, a little bit higher concept and maybe you know, a slight campy feel to it, to sort of open up that world into a more lived-in aspect.
I guess my final question would be, it's arriving, JAKOB'S Wife is arriving on Shudder the week before Fright Fest over here in the UK. What do you hope the audience experience when they sit down to watch it?
Oh, I've been to Fright Fest. I love the horror audience in the UK. I think you guys just really know your horror, and you're some of the best audiences I've ever seen anywhere in the world, because I've been to a lot of film festivals. And I just want to make films I want to make films for the fans, and I hope that people really come away with it having a fun time and having a thoughtful time about the movie, and just I really appreciate the fact that I feel people's love for me over the years, and support of me, and I just want to give the fans something that they can appreciate, to show them how much I appreciate them.